Should Myles Garrett's suspension be shortened?
Well, when we talk about these things, in the morning, I'm under the assumption that what you mean is the indefinite part. If we're talking about 6 games the rest of the season, I can see that on the outside. Stephen A. convinced me. I said 4 games. Stephen A. said rest of the season. There's only 6 games left anyway. It kind of sends a stronger message of deterrent. I can go with 6 games, but only 6 games. The point of punishment is, first you need to figure out, what actually happened? What were the results of the behavior? Also, what was the intent? And finally, does this punishment serve as a deterrent to that kind of behavior? In this case, in fact, the entire punishment is about deterrent. Because the results were Mason Rudolph didn't get hurt, and the intent was Myles Garrett wasn't trying to kill or maim him. It wasn't premeditated. What happened was Mason Rudolph started a fight, not just by kicking in the groin, but importantly, trying to take the helmet off. By the way, he was twisting his neck. Well, what would have happened if he would have snapped his neck? No, but he didn't, right? So, that's the fact. But he takes the helmet off. Myles Garrett's like, wait, you're bringing helmets into this hole. Okay, fine, I'm going to take your helmet off. He didn't then try to pummel him with his own helmet. There were 2 Steelers on him. Mason Rudolph, without a helmet, charged him. And Myles Garrett's like, oh, you want some more? And swung it at him, foolishly. That was a loss of impulse. And importantly, even if it's a bad moment, it needs to be punished for deterrent's sake because it is dangerous to swing a helmet at a helmet-less player, needless to say. It is in the rules, using the helmet as a weapon, 15 yards, automatic disqualification. So they've already stipulated what the punishment. But in addition, it's important to send a strong message of deterrence. That's not okay. That's what 6 games in the rest of the season is. The result is he wasn't hurt. The intention was not to do something really super bad to him. It was not premeditated. It was started by Mason Rudolph. It was exacerbated by Mason Rudolph, elevated, and continued by him. So for deterrence sake, 6 games, but only 6 games.
Well.
We're going to end up in the same place, which is at the bottom line, it should be 6 games. But I'm going to tell you something, it should be 6 games at a minimum. And Myles Garrett should thank his lucky stars if all it is the remainder of this season in the playoffs. I've listened to you guys over the last several days. I've talked about your arguments on my show, The Will Cain Show. And Max, I got to tell you, in the history of being involved in this show and watching you, this is the weakest argument I've ever heard you make. Well, let me amend that. The cliff argument, which we should rename the gentle slope argument.
He says it's Tom Brady's free falling. Go ahead.
It's no longer the cliff, just to be clear. It's Max gentle slope.
Kellerman. More of a ravine. Okay, I'll go.
This is the weakest, man. A bright line was crossed. A big, bold, bright line that anyone can see, from Damian Woody to Booger McFarland to Jeff Saturday to men who played this game. You simply cannot swing a brick with a handlebar attached to it at another man's bare head. I don't care what happened before, and I don't care what happened after. That cannot happen. The only reason we're not having a conversation today about the future of football and some man, in this case Mason Rudolph's, future health is by the grace of God. A 3 inches this way, 3 inches that way, the crown of the helmet versus the bottom of the helmet. Sheer, utter luck has saved not just Myles Garrett, not just Mason Rudolph, but the entire sport from having an introspective conversation about what its future is. Myles Garrett did something that simply cannot be done. I've heard your arguments. Seeing red, please. That does nothing to mitigate this. You've said, to my ever-loving confusion, he didn't mean to. It was a punch. He forgot that the helmet was in his hand. Dude, you're a boxing analyst, and a great one at that. It was a swing of a helmet at a man's head. And that, to finish, is clearly, at a minimum, sit out the rest of this season and be thankful that's all.
Do you mind, Stephen A?
Go ahead.
If 2 people are fighting, and one starts the fight, one then introduces baseball bats. He gets his bat taken away from him. The other guy still has a baseball bat. He pursues the guy with the baseball bat. And with people in between them, the guy with the baseball bat tries to go over the top like that. That is not the same thing as lining a guy's head up and swinging a baseball bat full force. In other words, if Myles Garrett had taken You said nothing that led up to that matters. I disagree. However, if Myles Garrett had taken the helmet and Mason Rudolph is standing there, defenseless, and runs up to him and swings at him like he's trying to, that is very different than what happened. Don't pretend that's not a gray area. Mason Rudolph was charging him, and Myles Garrett had two guys in between him, was like, let me take that. He wasn't trying to kill him. He wasn't trying to maim him. I agree. For deterrence sake, to emphasize how you can't swing a helmet, you could give him up to 6 games, but there has been an hysterical reaction to what Myles Garrett actually did.
Here's my issue with your argument, and then I'll leave it to you two. I think the motivation behind your position is the fact that people lost their damn minds, acting like the guy should have been arrested, he should have been taken off the field in cuffs, and all of that other stuff. Okay, if that was the reality of the situation, then your uproar would be, it would be valid. The problem is that didn't happen. What ultimately happened is that the NFL made a decision in relation to their game, which is something that you've repeatedly alluded to, and we all have throughout the years. We're living in an age where safety is an issue, player behavior is an issue. Optics matter more than ever before with the advent of social media and beyond. You take all of those things into consideration, and then you look at this guy that rips the helmet off the head of the quarterback. Yes, Mason Rudolph is not innocent. He did try to take off Myles Garrett's helmet. He did not succeed. Myles Garrett, in return, yanked the front of his face mask, ultimately pulled off his helmet, and then, while backing up and shielded by 2 offensive linemen who were pushing him back, even though Mason Rudolph was trying to get in his face, he elected to swing a haymaker with the helmet that connected to the head of Mason Rudolph. When you take those things into consideration, I don't have a problem with the 6 games. I don't have a problem with him being suspended for the rest of the season. Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.